While it's preparing, I will open up Twitch on the side just to make sure that we're actually live. I'm sure I'll take a couple of minutes for everyone to like hop on and join us. But in the meantime, how's your day been going so far, June?
Pretty good. 1 second.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm actually in Michigan right now, hence like
Oh, cool.
all the weird stuff on the wall.
Yeah.
Visiting my fiance.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just I guess one of the benefits of working remote, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how are you? How's things going?
Things are going great. This was a very eventful weekend. I went to Vegas with my friends, and then some pickpocket ended up stealing my phone and my wallet.
Oh.
So, yeah, it was a whole experience. Like I didn't miss a single part of it. But yeah, it's been fun. I had a whole mental breakdown at first, and then I was like, okay, let's get ourselves together, get back to work.
Geez.
But at least I can say I did it all. You know what I mean? It's
Never
all
again.
part of the experience. But yeah, I see Creature Nexus over here in the chat. Were you saying something, June? Sorry, my headphones have been kind of possessed lately.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, that is crazy. I know. It's also very sad. But the bright side is I can now buy a new phone. So that's fun.
How old was your old one?
I think I got it in like my first year of college, so like 3 or 4 years at this point.
All right, you were due for an upgrade.
Yeah, exactly. I love the background, by the way. Like the painting is super cool. I'm pretty sure I have the exact same lamp.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What's the guy's the guy who painted this? Leonid Afremov. And he's not like some big name artist, but like I really like his paintings, and he sells them like himself, like not through like third party. I mean, he does as well, but he also sells it himself for super cheap. Like if you bought it like, I don't know, through a third party, probably at least like 300-400, but from his site it's like 150. That's just the canvas though. Like I need to get like a frame to like stretch it over, but too lazy to do that.
These are so beautiful. They're so colorful and bright.
I know.
I love that.
The guy's awesome. And when you buy from his website, like if you have questions, he'll like answer them himself and stuff. So really awesome guy.
So cool. But yeah, today we do have a few people watching now, so we can go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk a little bit about like personal branding and all of, the usual stuff, resume, LinkedIn, the 101 on anyone who's trying to get a job or build a network in the tech industry. And then at the very end, if we have time, we'll also touch on social media, because that can be, that is like a crucial aspect of some people's lives, but it's not something that like everyone chooses to participate in. So we'll leave that for the end. But basically I have like a little Figma of like 3 different resumes. So let me pull that up. Like template resumes, I literally just got them off internet. And the first, like the goal that we're going to do in the very beginning is we're going to time ourselves and try to look through to see how many different like things that we would want to change. So it can be, hey, I would like suggest changing like the action verb that this bullet point started with. I would change the format. It can be absolutely anything, but the main goal is just to try to see, like, even if you're spending like 5 minutes on a resume that has been someone's worked on for like 5 years, there's always something that you can do to improve on it. And in the meantime, what I can do is I can also pull up a little form. So if anyone in the audience wants to submit their resume for us to review, then they can totally do that. That'd be really awesome as well. But yeah, June, do you have any like starting advice before we start this section of the live stream?
No, go for it.
Awesome. So I think I sent you a link in the private chat that has this Figma. Are you able to access it and edit it?
I can access it. We actually use Figma at work, but I never actually like edit anything. Is there? I just view them. Okay, hold on. Oh, I see them. Okay. I see the tools on the left.
So what we can do is if you click on the little like T symbol at the top and you can like write text in, you can choose your own color, and then go ahead and add notes everywhere throughout the document. And then once I have this resume form sent to the students, they can also send in their resumes. So we'll start with the first one. Actually, we can start with all three at once. Just go ham on all of these resumes and see what you would want to change.
Cool.
And I'll do the same thing. Also, if you guys in the comments want to add like what you would want to improve on these resumes, feel free to do that. I can send over the link for y'all to look at it as well. Edit. Okay, cool. Yeah, nice to meet you. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but it looks like it at XCDN. I don't know how to pronounce it, but welcome. Let me see. I want to write in purple. Also, June, do you mind kind of like talking through some of the like notes that you're writing down?
Sure. Can you actually help me figure out how to actually put the text on there? So I clicked the T, but when I click back onto that page, like it doesn't like open up a text box or anything.
It doesn't. It doesn't show you like a line where you can type stuff?
No. Can you try it on your screen? Maybe I'm like doing something wrong.
So for me, you might need to try reloading it because I just changed your edit access again to edit, and then you just start writing stuff, and then you might want to change it because I think it's white by default.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've heard a lot in the tech industry is not to like design it too much, is to try to keep it as simple and like plain as possible. I know a lot of like, especially front end people love making it super pretty and like adding colors and making it very well formatted, but
so I reloaded it, but I still cannot get it to like, as soon as I click T, click on the page, and then it just goes straight back to the cursor. I'm not sure why.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you able to edit this little piece of text that I added in here?
Yeah, I can, which is weird.
Okay, and if you just like click on the T somewhere and you type something in, what happens?
Oh, if I click on the T and type, it just starts changing my tools. That's okay, I guess. I'll just kind of like.
You could try copying and pasting that text box and changing it. Would that work? Like this one over here that has the DASDF.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. We'll find a way around this.
So the first thing I guess I kind of noticed is that you're kind of pigeonholing yourself to a role here as a web developer. I think, back in the day, like, when it was like webmaster and the developer would handle like everything in site, like that would be fine. But in this case, the web role has expanded so much. There's front end, back end, and within that, different types of levels, staff, junior, senior, etc. There's QA even. There's full stack, etc. So I wouldn't recommend like putting your title there. It's clear what kind of skill sets you have by looking at your experience. Oh wait, when I move my mouse like this, can you see what I'm like referring to?
Yeah, we can see what you're referring to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that as well, because a lot of times you might apply for one role and then be better suited for something else, and the recruiter's looking at your resume and they're like, oh, you know what, never mind, let's just throw this out because that's all they're interested in. So don't limit yourself in your options for sure. What do you think about having that little extra piece of text? Because I've heard a lot of like contradictory advice on whether or not you should have that kind of objective statement or like a line that describes what you're looking for?
Well, let me hear from you. Like, what kind of controversial statements do you see against it?
So most of the time I hear that like back in the day people really liked objective statements, but nowadays like people are just not that interested in it. They want to see your skills, they want to see your experiences and decide based off of that. But having a line that says, "Hey, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z" doesn't really matter to them as much. So you're kind of wasting space on your resume. Versus more older recruiters that would be like, no, we really definitely want that, so that it's also a chance for you to explain yourself. So if you're one of those non-traditional people that are coming from a different area and you don't have as much experiences, you can use it as a chance to explain why you don't have that. What do you think?
Well, I think to start off, resumes are really like a crack shot, like anywhere. A lot of like even within the same company, like every recruiter, every hiring manager kind of looks for different things. So to be honest, like, you have to use your best judgment. With regards to this like excerpt, this blurb here, I like it a lot personally as a hiring manager myself. As I was saying before, like there's so much depth and breadth in the web development role. And it's even if, I look at your experience and I see you've, worked with React and Node and whatever, it's a lot. It's nice to kind of know like what your direction is, right? Like I'd like to know, aside from, what tools you've been using, like what kind of person you are, like what you primarily value, in a blurb. If someone talks about working diligently and working long hours, that's a red flag. Versus if someone talks about like, leadership and getting involved with like extracurricular like groups and clubs, that's a huge plus. Much like it's not really like any more different than, like a college application. Obviously, a completely different format, and we're looking for work experience, but it is in a way like a resume is in a way for you to kind of like sell yourself to the hiring recruiters, right?
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. I myself have it on my resume and LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think you're the like one of the few people that have actually been able to explain why it is valuable, other than, everyone already does it. We've gotten a couple of comments. So there's Shogo, who's saying that they're themselves from a non-traditional background, so that's something that could be really helpful in their case. And then Stephen Green, the formatting of the two different columns. I've seen a lot of people use this. I personally, I'm not against it, but I wouldn't make my resume look like this because I like having that like single up through down kind of format instead of making a person look at different areas of the resume. But I've seen so many people use this that at the point, I don't even know if there's like a preference in general. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of like template, like I wouldn't get too worked up with that. Whatever looks clean. I think 2 columns is fine. Like this looks fine. If this were like rainbow colors with like each header, like that's not really reasonable. But like even looking at the second one, Robert Abogado, like that's fine. Like the traditional way. And then Alan Turing on the right, like that's fine too with like icons. Obviously speaking a little bit more towards like UX and design kind of aspect there. In terms of like the graphs, like I myself and other hiring managers, like we look at things like this and we're like, oh, cool, but it doesn't like make any difference. Like we don't think badly of it, nor do we think like any more highly of it than, because I mean, like the data is just subjective, right? It doesn't really mean anything. Like when you rate yourself like this, so it just, I would say if it makes sense, and like don't put like every skill that you've ever learned. Like for example, I wouldn't put like HTML on here because like you wouldn't be applying for a web development job unless you had solid HTML skills. Nor would I put like Mac OS and like Linux on there. It depends on what you're applying for. Obviously, if you're applying for like an infrastructure engineering job, maybe Linux is actually a skill that you need to show that you can do. Depends, right? guess looking through the rest of this, I will say that for GPAs, a lot of people ask about that. Obviously, if you got a 4.0, or I think the general, it depends on the school. Obviously, the general consensus, at least in the industry, is I'm not speaking for all the hiring managers. At least for me, I would say, like 3.4 and above is like super high. 3.0, less than 3.0 would like raise questions for me. I'd probably ask in an interview, like, hey, like, how did college go? This is for recent grads, obviously. If you have 10 years of experience, like, no one cares. Which actually, it does go to show. Actually, all of the jobs that I applied for ever, almost all of them never asked me for GPA. I didn't put GPA on my resume. I didn't do well. I did actually quite poorly, to be honest. But that never kind of affected my actual interviews, except for Google applications. They did ask for my GPA. Maybe that's why I didn't pass their interviews. But yeah, I mean, like when I look at education, really all I'm looking for is like when you went, and as well as where you went, right? I mean, not like specifically looking at all the exact like US news rankings of colleges, but there's a difference if you got a computer science degree at like MIT something versus like a top like 400 like college. That does say a lot about new hires, new grads, obviously. So the GPA is really up to you. If you think it's going to help, meaning maybe like at least like 3.2 and above, like I'd put it on. If not, just don't worry about it. No one's going to ask.
Yeah. We also got a question about what you were saying. What is a top 400 college?
Oh, I mean, you know how there are like college like rankings, right? There's, Ivy League colleges, and then, mid-tier colleges, and then there's like community colleges as well. So, getting a 4-year degree from a community college, like middle of nowhere, Michigan, is completely different from a 4-year degree in computer science at, Stanford or whatever, right? So that gives me as a hiring manager more confidence that, the academic basics, right?
A lot of companies also have like preferences for which universities they want to hire from.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's something that's interesting, is like looking at look at these resumes, like you're not too concerned about like the tiny little details, but like as a student, I've always been told like look out for every, single thing. You don't want to piss like a recruiter off when they're looking at your resume. So yeah, it definitely helps to see it from your perspective, that as long as, you have the information, it's easy to read, and it's what the recruiter is looking for. Oh, that's the other question that I had, is how do you tailor your resume to make sure that it is what the recruiter is looking for?
It really, as I said, depends on the industry and company. I know a lot of companies run their resumes through basically like search algorithms looking for specific terms and stuff. At least the way we did it at Walmart and Target, it was all manual. We obviously gave preference to referrals being any applications coming in from internal sources. But we did it manually. We get hundreds, we have like a junior spot open, like an entry-level engineering spot open, and we have hundreds of people apply. Some people have absolutely no background, they're like coffee baristas they haven't even done boot camp, they just want to get started. And, we look through all of those. So I wouldn't worry too much. Like, I think that's where the industry is headed. Like, I don't think it's reasonable to like feed people through a search algorithm that clearly isn't that great. That's not very equitable either. It's people who kind of can manipulate their resumes to hit all the keywords in the right ways. Doesn't mean, they deserve to be interviewed more than anyone else. So obviously, make sure you don't have like glaring mistakes. I would, in this case, looking at Alan Turing's, clearly he's put in a more like UX kind of design focused resume. And if that's the case, I'm obviously going to be looking at, okay, are things aligned? Are there spelling mistakes, or if I were looking for like a senior engineer, I would even look at like, is this like accessible, in terms of, are the colors like contrasting correctly? Are there, is the text big enough? Stuff like that. Trying to like learn 100 things from like one piece of paper about you, right? How you do your work. So, going back to your point, Trey, like making sure everything's perfect, like, yeah, go through it and make sure everything's perfect. But if you can convince yourself like, hey, like this is a good resume, I've checked all the spelling, the alignment's good, all the info's there, like don't worry about it at that point.
Yeah. We actually have a couple of students that have submitted their own resume. So we'll start with Ganning's. Are you able to see this, June?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Just let me know if there's any part that you want to like zoom in on.
Mm-hmm. Cool. 2-column layout looks fine. I like the big name on the top. Sometimes there are sometimes some folks like forget to like put their name on.
Yeah.
True story.
That would be so unfortunate.
GPA 4.5. Wow. Good job, Ganning.
Yeah, he's also the top student at the camp right now and has already started working on the future camp curriculum. So start.
Okay. Gotcha. Just at like first glance, like looks good in terms of, formatting, colors, the links to your email, LinkedIn, like that's all great. I'm assuming you have like phone number and like address.
Yeah,
like
I've just blocked it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you go down a little bit there?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you go up to experience?
Yes.
I think, sorry, if you could go back down again.
Yeah.
Projects. I think this is good. Like, I mean, I don't have like any glaring, like changes that I'd make to this. This is really good. If I would put a little bit more info about your actual internships, that's, I mean, usually for getting an internship, I would look at like these projects that you have here, but for getting an actual like full-time job, I'd look more at your internships. I know a lot of people put like their side projects on, especially for new grads. But to be honest, like we don't, at least I don't really I take that as a signal that like, hey, like you're motivated to like do things and learn things outside of your job and school. But in terms of like, it doesn't speak at all to like technical ability. You can say you've done like anything, but these are personal projects, right? Like there's no way for me to like, there's no like credibility when there's no organization behind it. The same way, if you work for Opti or, UNC, whatever, right? So I would, it says here on the first one, UNC Chapel Hill, using Python and Twitter API to determine if a relationship can be drawn. I would elaborate on that a lot. Seems like, there's a lot of stuff that you were doing there. And maybe that, maybe it was just one small project, but talk about like even non-technical things, like how you worked with like different people from, different parts of, functionalities of the business. Maybe talk about how you were mentored or something by a senior engineer or whatever, right? Whatever works to show, kind of like create a story of like what you were doing. For me here, like it just tells me like what project you did, but it doesn't really tell me like how much you were involved in what way. And that's obviously super important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I will add in Ganning's case, he is in high school and he has like a significant amount of experience as a high schooler. Yeah. But
right,
all of this still applies even if you're in college or have already graduated. We do have a couple of questions in the chat that I want to hit before we go to the next resume. So
Mhm.
one of them is, obviously this question doesn't have like a direct answer, but what are things that make a resume stand out or make an applicant stand out amongst others so that a recruiter would want to proceed with them and give them a call?
For me, it's definitely the amount of like depth and content you reveal in each of these work experiences. So I know for Ganning, it's a bit of a different story because he's in high school, but especially if you did some like bigger internships with, Google or Amazon or Microsoft, whatever, right? Even if it's not FANG, like any big tech internships, I'd like to know a lot about like what you were doing. I don't really care, as I said, much about like exactly your education. I don't really care about like what courses you took. What else? Volunteering is obviously something I want to look at too in terms of kind of extracurricular work. So what I'm saying is there's two big things, right? Like one is the actual experience, whether it's internships or not. I want to know exactly what you're doing. And the second half is like outside of what you're told to do, which is work and, just like school stuff, like what other things, what are you motivated to work on, outside of your time? Like, like for me, back when I was in college, I started a business called Elo Lift. It was like a service that matched like coaches up for the video game League of Legends. And it obviously wasn't successful because I'm not doing it now. But it did show like, hey, like I was motivated to, like build a website, like try a small business, and something, that I was interested in. And that, definitely kind of helped me land at least my first internship. So yeah, I mean, I like seeing that too. As I said, like it's not as important as like the work experience, but it's nice to see.
Yeah, and then Oscar actually asked a really good question. Like, are there any, on the flip side, any major like red flags that you see pretty commonly in resumes that make you just like want to toss the resume out?
Lots of red flags. If I would say like the biggest one, I would say, imagine, a hiring manager or recruiter goes through hundreds of these like every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're spending like as little time as possible. They're spending like 3 seconds to scan like format and like basic information. Like, hey, like, is it formatted correctly? Is there work experience? Is there education? If those aren't clearly legible or not, like if they're not there, like it's going to get thrown out. Yeah, as I said, I think experience, education. What else was on that? I'm trying to. If you don't have technical skill, like the skills, like column or section, that's fine as long as you describe that in the actual work experience. And if anything, I'd much rather look at that, the work experience aspect than the skills, because it's easy to just learn a language like online, but it's different when you actually use it in the workplace. Other red flags is if you've been jumping between companies a lot. Like I would say a red flag for me is if you're a contractor, it makes sense. But if you're full-time, if you're jumping more than, like once a year, a couple of times, like that's a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, companies go through a lot of like effort to onboard and train their employees, so they wouldn't want you to just like hop off that quickly.
Exactly, yeah. I do remember, and if you left that same company and then wanted to come back, that's not necessarily a red flag, but it's just a flag nonetheless. Like you're gonna have to be able to explain that. And ideally, I would just put that explanation like in your resume itself, like why you left in the first place and why you're coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, as a hiring manager, like if I'm hiring someone who's like a principal architect, like that's a whole different story. But at least for new grads, it's mostly about culture fit, right? And like who you are as a person. That's why that blurb is really important, at least to me, to kind of understand who you are. If I have to look through like 100 like resumes of college applicants and they all have similar work experience, right? Like they all do similar coursework, and they all do similar internships. Like if you do an internship at Google versus Microsoft versus Facebook, like that doesn't mean that much to me. Like, I mean, it means a lot. I mean, I'm saying like there's not much difference between the two in terms of how we look at it in terms of like skill set. You're still learning like software engineering, right? I lost my train of thought. Are there any other questions?
We do have quite a few questions. One of them was like, is this boot camp or any type of coding boot camp worth putting on a resume?
Yeah, I would put it on your resume. I think the involvement, like proactively seeking involvement, learning and involvement outside of just your school stuff, that matters a lot. For sure, once you have like 10 years of experience or whatever, or even like a few years of experience, I'd kind of cut these like things out and really work on the work experience part. I think like a successful like non-new grad, but like if you have at least a few years of experience, like a successful like resume, if it were a one pager, I would do like 70% of that work experience. I really want to know like what you were doing, in what way you were involved, in what way you were leading. But for new grads, yeah, like put these in. And that whole like, oh, make your resume one page is like totally a myth. Nobody cares. I mean, don't make it like 6 pages, please. But don't worry about like going to 2 pages, even 3 once you start building that work experience. That's totally fine.
Yeah, I think
it's funny because as you like go up more, like your resume is like super big, like as a new grad, and then it starts like slimming down because you're actually getting work experience, and then further along it'll start slimming down even more because I mean, nobody will care what you did 20 years ago.
Yeah, I remember like I used to work as a peer advisor in the UC Davis Internship Center, and like that was one of the things that we had to be very strict about formatting, to say, no, you cannot go over 1 page. And I think the reason that they say that is just because there's students that will put their entire life story on that 1 piece of paper. They're like, oh, let me tell you about every single one of my hobbies and, the clubs that I did in high school. So it's more about like prioritizing than anything. And also, Word, vomit directly onto a piece of paper, because then someone else has to go through that. Let's see, what other questions do we have? We touched on this a little bit, but is having skills bar chart on a resume a good idea? Some recruiters say that they don't recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, assuming like you make it readable and like designed okay, and you don't put like 20 different skills. Like hardworking is like not a skill. It's just a discipline. If you actually have experience with C, or you have experience with like JavaScript or Node.js, like put it on there. It does help, and it obviously helps with kind of getting through those search filters some companies use. But it really depends, like case by case. Like if you have like a lot of work experience, or even not at work experience, internships or side projects that have like a lot of meat behind them, I would just forgo it. Like your experience speaks for itself. And everybody, like I'm sure you guys know as well as students, but even in the industry, for folks that are older in the industry too, know that languages are just languages, right? Like programming is just like problem solving. Doesn't matter what language you're using, whether you use like Perl or like Rust or C or JavaScript. It doesn't matter. Like you can always learn that. That's not the hard part. I mean, you can go through like a 1-day tutorial and learn C++ basically. But sure, I mean, if you're like super expert at C++, you've like read the actual C++ book by the guy, I forgot his name, like that actually created it, like put it on there. Like that's an achievement. Not a lot of people do. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like case by case, like if you think it actually adds value, you're actually good at all those things. Sorry, not even good. Like I would say if you're expert at them, put them there. If you're not good at them, like you just started learning it or have never used it in a project, like don't put it on there, because it's just gonna kind of dock a point rather than make it look better.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned a little bit about like soft skills. I've seen a lot of people that are like, I'm a hard worker or I'm a fast learner. And I'd say like going back to like, should you put a boot camp on there if you want someone to know that you're a fast learner or that you're good at learning and that's a skill that you want them to know that you have, then it's worth putting the boot camp. But don't just say that you are, you know, a learner or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Show it instead of just like saying it, if that makes sense.
Exactly. How can a non-traditional student compete with someone who has an internship at Google or one of those companies, or at least get a follow-up call? Just be considered.
Non-traditional as in like not computer science? Maybe?
Yeah, someone who's trying to get into tech but doesn't have as many years of experience.
I can't speak for Google. I mean, as I said, the industry and the company will affect a lot on how that resume is kind of fed through the system. If I were to just say, you know, I'm not going to make any speculations, like just from my experience at Walmart and like Target, we like when we get hundreds of resumes for entry-level jobs, it's about like what steps have you taken to actually, you know, immerse yourself in coding. So bid project being a good example. You know, doing a hack reactor boot camp, that's also a really good example. But if you're just like, hey, like I made like one personal website, right now I'm like a coffee barista and like, you know, I'm still learning, like that's gonna like your resume is gonna go straight in the bin. But yeah, in that case, you know, put down bid project, put down your side projects, go into detail like what you learned. Even better, make a personal like website with like the different projects, like explaining them, you know, having a portfolio, all that.
Yeah. I mean, this is the same question, but if you have no relevant work experience, how do you market like a part-time summer job as a cashier on a tech resume? And is that even worth including?
If we have no relevant work experience, how do I market my part-time? What's that worth? I mean, you'd still put that if that's your current job, you'd still put that in your resume regardless. It'd still work. I mean, yeah, it's not tech related, but you know, like being a developer, being a programmer isn't just about like coding, right? It's about working with other people in leadership and teamwork. As cheesy as that sounds, you'd be surprised at how important, you know, culture and, you know, teamwork and just being nice to each other, how hard that is to find in the workplace. I will say Target has been a great surprise for me. I didn't realize it was going to be this different, but maybe it's just like the Midwestern culture. But going back to the question here, if you have no relevant work experience, like, well, if you're talking about work, are you talking about work experience or just like side project experience, including like bid project?
That's a good question. I think it's just generally a lot of college students. They might not have gotten those internships. They might not have gone to hackathons and gotten a chance to build their own projects, but they're still competing for the same jobs with the students that have. So in that case, like, how do you make yourself marketable?
Okay, yeah. I'm seeing the comment now, all of the above, all I got is my education. Like you have to, like there's no other way. Like you have to show that you've already immersed yourself in programming. Bid project being a good start, obviously, as I said. But like we get hundreds of resumes like that where, you know, there's, you know, you're not in the field already and you haven't like done anything in terms of like technology work. Like we get so many of those versus we get, let's say like 100 of those versus 100 people who did immerse themselves in, you know, like coding related things. Maybe they did a personal project and, you know, did bid project and volunteering or whatever, right? Like it's like for us, like we have to choose the people that, you know, actually did go out and do those, right? It's not fair for them.
Yeah.
Oh, computer hardware, not software. Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the hardware electrical engineering industry. I could take guesses, but I won't. I'll spare you guys that.
I will also say for the folks that are asking about like non-traditional backgrounds, there are like companies have teams that are dedicated to bringing you on board. So I wouldn't don't limit yourself to applying just through the regular job portal. Like try to find those recruiters that are on the diversity team that can help you like not only market yourself better, but also like find the right people to talk to for that purpose.
And like at Target, I don't know. I don't remember Walmart. I don't think Walmart had any programs. Target, which is one of the things I was surprised by, has a lot of different programs like that to kind of boost your career at every level, not just new grad. So a new grad, we have something called TLP, Technology Leadership Program. Think of it as like, we have internships too, but like TLP is more like specifically for new grads, and it's like halfway between internship and like a full-time job. So you do like rotations across like different teams, and you kind of like try out different things, and then you end up like getting an offer, and then you decide like which team you want to go on. And then further on in your career, we have ELEAP, sorry, is the first one, which is for senior engineers who want to do like a boot camp to kind of like carve their way to be lead engineers. We have ELEAP program, which is for lead engineers, or I think it's for lead engineers to carve their way to becoming a senior engineering manager. So we do have lots of programs like that, and it's the best way, I would say, is to obviously go look at their career site, but that's a little bit difficult sometimes, like parsing through like tens of thousands of jobs. Another kind of trick is to follow like hiring managers on LinkedIn. So I mean, you can just like Google, like let's say like for example like Target. You go to LinkedIn and you look for like Target jobs or whatever on LinkedIn, and then there's specific like hiring managers, recruiters that are like tagged to that. Follow them and then see what kind of posts they put, because they will always like, it's their job, right? Like they'll always post programs like that. And I think like people don't realize like how powerful that is. Like a company is committing to, pour in all these extra resources to kind of accelerate your career. And I think a lot of people are missing that opportunity.
Yeah. Also, it's a lot about like quality over quantity. So you're not trying to rack up like 100 internships and 100 side projects. Even if you're like, I don't have any other experience, but I did this boot camp or I did this course, and you can talk about it in a way that shows them that you're willing to put the time and effort to learn, and you're like able to come out of it with a really cool project. Even if it was just one small project, it's okay.
Yeah.
They will, like, if you're from a non-traditional background, that's good for them. There's a major lack of diversity. They need more people. So use that as like a strength and not a weakness for yourself. I'm trying to see if there's any.
I will say the best engineers I've ever met, like even the top 3, were people without computer science degrees. One of them came with physics degree. One of them didn't even go to college, actually, came out of high school. And the other one did, I believe, a chemistry degree. And obviously when they first joined, like they were still newbies and, understanding the tech stack, but within like 2 years, they were the smartest people I've ever met. So don't let that bring you down.
There's another question. When should one start looking for or applying to summer internships?
That is not an answer I have for you. It obviously depends on the company and industry. The only thing I can say is early as possible. A lot of them are rolling, even if they say they're not rolling like admissions, like it is, because there's no freaking way like a team of hiring recruiters can go through 1,000 resume in like a week. Earlier is always better. Near the end, we get a huge influx of when we get closer to summer. We get a huge influx of applications, and obviously that makes it a lot harder to kind of like pick you out amongst other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know like from my personal college experience, like people don't talk about internships in freshman year, like students don't really talk about it. But there are quite a few students that are like looking for opportunities or end up having their hiring manager like find them. And a lot of these companies, especially the big ones, have programs that are targeting freshman students. So if you're
Oh,
just
okay.
starting, yeah, they'll be like, we want to teach you earlier on and then like continuously give you internships over the next few summers until you're graduating from school and then you end up getting a job right off the bat. And then after your freshman year, even if you didn't get that, like, don't worry about your other friends. Just try to look for your like stuff for yourself. Like all year long, there's going to be opportunities and people looking for things. Um, but yeah, even if you don't want an internship, just try to get one. And that way you have the kind of experience of talking to a recruiter and knowing how to go through the interview process so that when you are actively looking for something, you're not like overwhelmed by all of the, procedures and everything.
Yeah. And
Um,
one thing to know, like if you can't get an internship, in the worst case, like don't worry about it. I was a computer science major at University of Michigan with a lot of recruiting, and I still didn't get one until my third year. Um, and even that was with like a very small startup in Michigan. But at the end of the day, it's about like what you do, what you make out of it with that time, whether it is like a small internship or maybe you do a personal project. You got to make sure that you're able to speak to, whatever you were working on that time.
yeah, definitely. What are some good websites to look at for internships, or does that really vary depending on what you're looking
um, I'm not sure. I mean, like there's always, the generic, like the ones you think of off the top of your head, like going to, the actual company website, careers website, right? Like careers.xyzcompany.com. I guarantee it will hit something.
at?
You can look at LinkedIn. I think people are a little bit like afraid of LinkedIn because, like it's sort of like a social media platform. So you kind of assume like, oh, it's not, that great. But I know a lot of friends, not necessarily internships, but at least have gotten a lot of different types of full-time jobs off LinkedIn. It does work, even though a lot of the messages you get are like kind of spammy. um, the best way, honestly, is through word of mouth and networking. Um, so obviously, if you guys are interested in a target internship, although, you know, you would have to be in Minnesota for that. So I know that's a bit of a deal breaker for most. But if you are interested, I'd love to connect you guys with a hiring recruiter. That basically makes sure that you don't get filtered out by a system, and that you actually kind of get considered for an interview. Um, assuming you have the right work experience or just education at least, right? Um, yeah, I mean, network's always the best. Like, I think I can't stress that enough. Like, when it comes to like work experience and jobs, like you need to make sure you're staying in touch with people from the industry.
Yeah, and that's a great point for like the camp itself. Like you all have direct access to at least one person who's already in the industry, probably has worked for like a number of years. Ask them, even if they like their company isn't hiring, they know people that are hiring for other companies, startups, and everything. So they can put you in contact. They can help you prepare. Like all of the mentors, it's not like after the camp they're just going to leave you. Like they're going to want to help you. You know, find a job or whatever else you're looking for. So be their best friend. Just do what you got to. For the shy person, how does one network?
I think for networking, like, I don't know, when I was a student too, I was like afraid of it too. I don't necessarily consider myself a shy person, nor do I consider myself an extrovert either, maybe in between. But I always kind of like dreaded like, oh, networking. I have to like talk for hours and hours. Like I thought that meant like going to career fairs and like talking up like people at the booth. Like, sure, that's one part of networking, but um, like think about it this way: like companies always they're always in need of talented people, right? And it's not just like, oh, how well can you code? As I said, it's leadership, it's teamwork, it's cooperation, it's like how diligent are you? Like, are you a problem solver? Things like that. And that's really hard to come by, in the sense that I can't, like, if I don't have a network, right, and I'm like trying to hire someone, like, where do I go? In the same sense that you guys are asking, like, oh, where do I apply for internships? What's a good place to like go? Like, where would I go? Should I go to LinkedIn, or like, I mean, that's one way, obviously, or like before LinkedIn, like, how would you have done it? Like, just have a job portal and wait for applications to come in. But at the same time, the contradiction is like, well, how do I know like people are actually seeing this application portal and actually being able to apply for these jobs, right? So it's hard for us, like, as companies, to like find talented folks, and that's why a network is really a mutual thing. And you might think from your perspective, oh, I'm just a student, like I don't have anything to offer, but you have a lot to offer, if anything more than most people, because you're so young, you're so talented, you're already immersed in all of these different types of things. I'm assuming, like, you guys are hardworking and nice people, you work well with people. And we want to find those people, but it's hard, and that's where the network comes in. Like, just be like, it's not so much that you're networking, quote, quote. It's just that, think of it as like, you're just making friends, right? Like, if we just got rid of the word networking, like, we're just socializing here, right? Like, but we're still creating a network, in the sense that, like, hey, like, we're discussing things about career. I'm opening up like the opportunity for you guys to like send me your resumes to, so that I can pass that forward to my hiring recruiters, etc. That's what it is, right? Like, it doesn't have to be like some weird like formal agreement on like how we're gonna like talk about things. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, if I knew someone who was a great person and at least like a decent developer, like, I'd want them on, my organization like ASAP. So
Yeah. Look at it from like the recruiter's perspective. If they have like a piece of paper in front of them versus a person that they know, they're probably more likely to go for that person. So that's like, give yourself your best chances. Being shy, it can be super intimidating, like putting yourself out there, especially with like the whole, like, I don't know if I'm good enough, all these people are better than me. That those feelings are, everyone feels that. But if you're putting so much work and effort into trying to get a job, like, sending that resume is not going to be enough. Just try your best to really network and find people that are able to help you.
Yeah. And just a kind of example story, real case, actually, in the last couple of months, I hired someone called Rachel. She's been a pharmacist for, I don't know, 6 years or something. And she did a 3-month hack reactor last year in December. She did one interview with Amazon, didn't get in though. And then she started taking tutoring lessons from a friend of mine, Fong. He used to be a teammate for me, and I liked him a lot. And he started doing tutoring for like algorithm related, like lead code type of stuff. And she was a student. And I basically asked Fong, like, hey, like, do you have anybody in mind who'd be a good, like entry level like engineer? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm tutoring someone called Rachel. So Rachel and I later next week had a 1-hour call, about like, why she wanted to make the move, like what she was interested in, like what she wanted to do 5-10 years from now, whatever, right? All that good stuff. And it wasn't to like interview her in terms of technical like ability. Obviously, like she was just starting out, but that 1 hour tells me a lot about like who she is as a person. And from there, like, I got her into the interview pipeline. She interviewed. She actually did really well on the technical interview because she was being tutored by my friend who is obviously talented. And on the soft skills side, like, I already knew, I had like basically a vouch from my friend Fong, as well as myself, having talked to her before. That network helped her like kind of push that application over to the accepted like state. And, we extended an offer. She is actually making just a little bit above average for her level at our company, which is like great because she has 0 years of experience. So it's all like that never would have happened if she didn't have that network with Fong, and if Fong didn't have that network with me, right? So that's an example of like how someone with 0 years of experience did a hack reactor, got a full-time job as a software engineer.
Yeah. There is another question. This is from Ganning. He's asking if high school internships matter, which in your case, Ganning, you are in high school. So yes, that's all you can do. But what do you think about like students that are at the college level or people that have already graduated?
Yeah, I mean, high school internships do matter to a point, though. I would say, if you have like 5 internships in high school and like 5 internships in college, like please don't put 10 internships and like your projects and everything. Like that's going to be like 3 pages worth of stuff. Um, just put honestly, like what you're most proud of, the complex, like meaty things. Even if it is from high school, like you have to prioritize, because people, especially for new grads, like I will ask you, if it's like even from like a high school thing, like 5 years ago, I'll be like, tell me everything about this. I want to know everything. And you can't just say like, oh, I built like this like website that does this, end of story, right? I want to know like what made you like motivated to do it. What made you decide like what tech stack to use? Like, why'd you use DigitalOcean? Why'd you use Azure? Whatever, right? What kind of challenges you face? Like all of those questions. Like it could go on for like hours. I mean, not that it would, but I'm just saying, like, have that content ready.
Yeah.
If you do end up putting like high school internships on there.
Yeah. And then when applying for jobs and internships, how many should you apply at a time?
Oh, apply to however many you want. If you want to apply to 500, go for it. I think I applied to like 80, and I only got an offer from like 2 or 3 of them. And I think that was like lucky, considering compared to like my friends too. Like I had actually my friend Fong, I think he sent an application. This was for a full-time job after Hack Reactor, like 150. He did one of those like infographics about like how his applications turned out. He did like 150, and he only got like 2 offers or something. But that's normal. Like, don't feel bad. Like, everybody, even the the greatest engineers get rejected from a lot of places. But do remember, like some companies do have watch lists or blacklists. So most of them will be friendly. Like if you apply too many times, they'll just be like, hey, like you can't apply for another like 6 months or whatever. But if you keep ignoring that and like you keep applying anyways, you might be put on a blacklist where like your name and like resume will be filtered out all the time. So don't spam, like just be reasonable.
Yeah.
I would say like every 6 months is reasonable.
And I also know that like there are people that will apply to hundreds of internships all the time and not get anything, or they'll go through all of like the interview processes and still not get that very far. So if you're reaching that point where you're spending like hours every week for months on end and you're not getting what you want, definitely take a step back and try to like reach out to like an advisor or someone who's already in the industry and see like where you're going wrong, because you don't want to like brute force it and just like spend so much of your time and energy. Those rejections are going to take like a mental toll on you as well.
Yeah. You get 500 rejections. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
So yeah, it's not always a numbers game. Sometimes you just have to reevaluate.
Yeah.
We do have like a little bit more time left. So are you down to go and look at some of the students like LinkedIn's and kind of talk a little bit about LinkedIn experience?
Sure.
Awesome. Ganning, I'll come back to your question in a second. But so this is Maria. She's one of our students, and she sent over her LinkedIn for us to check out. Do you have any like general words of advice before we jump into this?
Definitely have at least a business casual, semi-professional profile picture. Mm-hmm. Although we say that, it doesn't matter, we're holistic about it. Like it like first impression, which is like your profile picture, does matter. Don't put anything weird on there. What else? The blurb, as I said, I read that all the time. I think it's super important to me. As a rising senior studying computer science, expected to graduate last afternoon. Okay. Cool. I like that. I think there's also a way like on your profile you can like set it so that it says like open to jobs or like open to work or something like that.
Yeah. Recruiters can see that, so I don't think
Okay.
average person can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Those are definitely helpful. I know my recruiter like goes through those all the time.
Oh, Maria's asking what you think about this picture, if it's professional enough.
Oh, no, it is professional. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it wasn't. I was just saying like,
yeah, there are some people that'll have like anime pictures on their LinkedIn. So
yeah. It's not a deal breaker if you have a weird picture, but as long as it's like appropriate. But first impressions, they matter a lot. All right, so looking at the work experience, optimize. Okay, yeah, I mean that's a pretty good amount of detail. I would say like going into this doesn't. Hold on. Maybe going into a little bit more about like the actual tech. I'm assuming this was like a software related job. Maybe not. Assuming this is a software related job, I would put in more detail about. Oh, okay, it wasn't. Okay, in that case, that's fine. Sequoia leadership, yeah, like that looks great. I would say like that's a pretty good amount of info, at least for non-tech related work. If you could scroll down there. California, Berkeley. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, after the education, I usually don't scroll down, but yeah, I mean, this, you guys all have like perfect LinkedIns and resumes. Why are you even here?
Well, I have a question. So when you were reading through this, it was kind of hard to decipher if this was for tech or not, right? So is that something that maybe like we could make it a little bit clearer if this is a marketing thing or, an operations thing or a tech thing?
Yeah, in this case, maybe elaborating on like your position with maybe the organization you're in. So, for me, like we have digital organization versus marketing organization. So obviously, if you're in one or the other, it's very clear as to what you're doing. I'm assuming, in this case, you're a team leader within like marketing or something, right? Not digital or like software. So, I mean, that would definitely help. But honestly, like, I mean, if I'm thinking about it realistically, if you did make it ambiguous like this, that actually might be in your benefit for people, the recruiters, to kind of like pique their interest and actually start asking questions and like getting that foot in the door, meaning like actually having that conversation with the recruiter. Like obviously that's critical, and in this case, that ambiguity might actually help you. Although I wouldn't say that's like an general tip or advice. I'm just saying that could happen.
Yeah, if they just kind of, yeah, definitely. She did ask if she should mention her CS projects since they're on her resume.
Yeah, I would put portfolio stuff on here too. I put all my like blogs on LinkedIn as well. I love writing blog posts. Nothing like crazy good or anything, just writing about the stuff that I do at work. And I always put it on LinkedIn. As far as I know, like people read it because you can on Medium, you can see like where the traffic is coming from, like LinkedIn or other social media. So I know people are reading it from LinkedIn. So that does help.
Yeah, I'd also add like there's a couple of different ways people will reach your LinkedIn. Either they're like specifically looking for skills or experiences, and then the more detail your LinkedIn has, the easier it is for them to find your profile. Or you had it on your resume or something like that, and then they happen to be like, okay, that's a cool resume. I want to learn more about this person. So you definitely don't want to limit what you're putting up here.
Yeah.
Like keep it focused, but feel free to just like add all of your experiences if possible.
Yeah.
Cool. And then we have another one from Beatrix.
I like the banner profile, the banner picture. That is definitely goes to show the extra attention to the experience effort there. I like that. So just to make sure you guys understand, like, I'm a hiring manager. There's a difference between a hiring manager and a hiring recruiter. So as an engineering manager, like obviously I'm trying to hire people, but I have a partner in HR, the recruiter, who actually like goes through all the, resumes and like posts these job postings and all that. So those will be like, whenever you apply to like on a portal or whatever, like that's your front line. Um, and those people generally won't look much at your LinkedIn, if at all. Sometimes they might just look at your resume only. But hiring manager like myself, like I want to look at like every aspect. So I look at the resume, I look at LinkedIn. Sometimes I'll even Google you guys, although it's hard. There's a lot of people with similar names, but I'd like to kind of get a more holistic sense. So don't think like, hey, like my LinkedIn is perfect, so I can just kind of like go easy on the resume. Like that's not the case at all. Cool. So all right. Oh, okay. This is interesting. I like this. It's a little bit long. At first, I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about how long it is, but the content is good. It all adds value and it kind of paints a better picture of who you are.
Yeah.
That matters a lot. In my blurb, I talk about my hobbies too, about like cooking and photography and karaoke, stuff like that. So I like this. All right, let's move on. Featured. Hey, what is this?
I don't know. I've never seen this. Are these like posts in which maybe she's been tagged in by other people? Oh, this is maybe posts that she's been involved in that she has featured on her own profile.
Oh,
People to look at.
Okay, yeah, that's I wonder if I'm sure a hiring recruiter knows like all the intricacies about LinkedIn. I obviously don't clearly, but
yeah, if you're like
there's
super active and you want like certain activities to stand out, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can feature your posts. Oh, wait, are those her posts? Can you click on one of them?
Let's check. Yeah, these are.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, that's cool. I like that. That's, getting involved in like the community and, doing extracurricular. Yeah, that's definitely a huge plus. We love to see that. And almost nobody does that, like actually getting involved with the community. Or maybe they don't put it on their resume or LinkedIn. Yeah. I don't know. I like it.
Yeah.
I like that you split your roles into at the same company, even though, it was for, the same time period. I like to see that you were actually working on two kind of different areas. Obviously, don't try to like split this out into like 4 different things like Scrum Master and, like QA and like 6 other different roles. Just keep it reasonable, as I said. But I like this. I would put a lot more info on that web developer aspect. Like what kind of tech stack you use, like what kind of people you worked with. I'd want to know a lot more on that, especially because it's your most recent work history. Technical writer. Oh, cool. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Oh, you have quite a lot of experience, Beatrix.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. This was volunteer work. That's kind of smart, looping that into work experience, even though it's volunteering. At the end of the day, an organization is backing you. Like that name of that organization is behind you and you did work for them. So in any case, even if you weren't paid, that's still work experience. So I don't see anything like unethical about that. I like it.
She has a lot of experience.
Yeah. I think my question would be kind of like what made you want to like juggle all these different things in such a short period of time, all the time? So like, for example, this one, you did 2 things, right? in the same amount of time for only 2 months. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that, but and I wouldn't say that's a red flag either. It would be something I'd ask.
Yeah.
Maybe something you'd put in the blurb too. Yeah, that is just a lot of stuff. Yeah, I mean, looking through this, that is my first thought is like, okay, how much of this is actual work experience versus how much of this is like actual organization. So I'd start probably doing my research into some of these. Because my kind of first thought is like, okay, if all of these are like 2, 3, or max like 4 months, I'm wondering like, are these side projects or are these like actual contracts? Or I mean, if these are full-time, like obviously that'd be a red flag, right? But that would be something I'd ask.
And she has some like certifications at the bottom too. That's cool.
Yeah, certifications, licenses, like that helps a lot. You know, again, like involvement and going out and doing things that you aren't like asked to do. We have at Target at least this thing called 50 Days of Learning where you're given as part of your regular 9 to 5, you know, work office hours, like 50 days to do whatever learning you want. It can be about anything about tech, leadership, business, whatever, right? So for me, I'm reading a bunch of like a series of Harvard Business Review top 10 like must read like books. That's my thing. So having certifications on there and licenses, like that's also another way that you're showing that you're continuously learning. You know, I don't want to hire a great senior engineer and like they don't learn anything in the next year. They just do what they've always done. That's not valuable to me, right?
I will say one thing, I think June, you kind of touched on this as well, is when you have so many experiences in such a short amount of time, it's good that people will start looking into it and doing more research into you. And if it's like legit, it'll be good. But it also kind of makes it difficult for us to understand, or like for the recruiter to understand what your focus is and what you actually want to accomplish in life. And it might make you seem a little bit like you're all over the place. So you might want to focus what you're actually putting on your profile, even if you've done all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
for
is
LinkedIn, it's not as, I would say it's not as critical to kind of like prune that, just because it does do that like collapse after like 3 or 4 experiences. So if somebody really wanted to know, like they'll have to explicitly go in.
Yeah.
But for resumes, for sure, like there's no way you're gonna put, I don't know how many that was, like 20 plus work experiences. No one's gonna be able to go through all of that in like 10 seconds that they have to go through resumes. As I said, it's about the content, right? Like pick like, for resumes at least, pick like your top, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5 things that you did and like really elaborate upon it, like how you contributed, you know, and all that good stuff.
Awesome. And then let's hop over to Paris's. Oh, Paris, could you resend your LinkedIn in the chat? Because this link isn't working. In the meantime, I will go over to Oscar's, his Creature Next, in the chat. Oh, this is super minor, but for some reason in the beginning, people were like, oh, you have to have 500 connections so that like it looks like you're super connected. Is that thing?
No, that is completely mythical.
Awesome. Because I was like, why would that matter, you know?
No, it doesn't matter at all. I mean, sure. I mean, you might show up in more LinkedIn search results, like when recruiters do like searches for jobs, maybe in that sense. But like when I'm looking at these interviews, like I don't care if you have 1 person or 1,000. It's a matter of just clicking connect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would put, obviously, you know, the first thing is like descriptions, like what did you do there? I don't know, maybe like for launch school, like even for launch school, if you were doing it for 1.5 years, like I'd love to know, what were you spending 1.5 years on? You know, clearly you were a student learning something. If it were like, Bit projects is a little bit different, because it's like a shorter, like a cohort. If you didn't put a description, like it's not the end of the world. But for something where you've committed this much time, like I need to know at that point, like what you were doing. I mean, same with everything else, right? You've done so many of these things. Obviously, you don't have to write like a huge paragraph on like what a pilot production technician 3 does, because if you're getting into the software engineering field, it's not going to matter as much, right? I'm assuming. Obviously, if you're going into electrical engineering, maybe it does matter, right? So it depends there. At least for that initial, the most recent experience with launch school, I would need to know like what you were doing there. All right, and then scroll down. What else is? Okay. Oh, you got endorsements. Okay, cool. Now you got to get endorsements for JavaScript, web development, software engineering, Scrum. Don't worry about endorsements. Hiring recruiters know like it's a quid pro quo thing, where people just kind of give each other like endorsements, and we don't put a lot of value into that, if at all. So no worries about that.
Oscar did say that he doesn't want to clone his resume. Like, main thing is, Oscar, just because they're looking at your LinkedIn doesn't mean that they've already seen your resume. They might have never seen it before. So if they see this and there's not enough information for them to judge you, they might just like leave your profile immediately. So you still want to have that same content here. You might just want to add more as well on top of that.
Yeah. You'd be surprised at how active the hiring community is on LinkedIn. Like I get like, I'm not even that experienced in the industry. I don't have like 10 plus years, and I still get like at least like 4 or 5 messages like almost every day on LinkedIn. And I mean, I don't look at it. I mean, look at Shreya, you already have a message too, right? And obviously having a solid LinkedIn profile is going to kind of help you increase those connections.
Yeah. I'm going to go over to Paris's LinkedIn again. Awesome.
All right. Cloud. That's a very clear objective and your interest. So I like that. I'm an IT professional. I'm a little bit conflicted about this first sentence. I'm an IT professional who's currently working my way into the area of front-end development. I would almost say that you should just kind of like go for it and say that you're a front-end like developer, whatever you want to market yourself as, with previous experience as IT professional. Like really flip it around. Obviously, like the confidence aspect, as well as the kind of like, if this is the first thing that I'm reading is I'm an IT professional, like that already anchors me to the fact that like, hey, like you're good at IT, and potentially nothing else. I would say anchor me to the front end development part. Even if you're not a front end developer now, like you still do front end development, right? It doesn't have to be for a company, and kind of anchor the hiring recruiters that way. So I'd flip that around. Personally, I would put a little bit more info in the blurb, but I think, it's controversial. I just like to see, like kind of why you got into it, why you're making this career switch, when you made it, like what kind of like extracurricular things you're getting involved with, or, just knowing more about you would be nice.
I will also say, if you're trying to get into front end, you want to show that you have more of like the coding side of it, not the low code or no code side. So WordPress is not something that you want to really highlight on your profile, unless you're like going into UI UX or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, even here in your first job, in your most recent one, you've used JavaScript. So I wouldn't see why you wouldn't put that as, as part of your blurb too. Obviously, JavaScript being like basically the king of all languages in most front end jobs, right?
Yeah.
I like the breakdown of the description. Talking about the languages you used, that objective metric of 80%, even though, you don't have proof to back it up, like really kind of like speaking to that, being proactive in speaking to that shows me that you're actually involved and interested in, your actual job. You're not just there for the paycheck. You actually understand like the metrics, the needle that you're pushing and stuff like that. Super important. We have, there's lots of engineers who are great at coding, but have no idea like why they're doing it or like what the business is even trying to strategically do. That's a big red flag, but this is good. I like it. I like that as well. Yeah. This is good. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to stick to the narrative kind of format where you're kind of like typing it out in like sentences like these, keep it short like this, like 3 small paragraphs or 2 small paragraphs. I wouldn't go more than this if they're paragraphs. If you do bullet points, like be very descriptive, even if it goes kind of long. But this is good. I like that you're trying to like tell a story with it.
Yeah. I will say like the bottom half of your LinkedIn experiences look great. You just want to make sure that when people see the top half, they want to scroll down to that bottom half. Because sometimes people would just see like, oh, like June mentioned, IT professional, not really interested, move on to the next page. Whereas your experiences do show that you have the experiences they need.
Yeah, I mean, like your second work experience there is freelance web developer. Why wouldn't you say you're a web developer, right? You've literally done it.
Another thing could be that like sometimes people just forget to update that section because it's like no one really talks about the about section that much. But yeah, if you're actively looking for a job, then definitely make sure to keep every side of it updated as much as possible.
Yeah, it only takes like 5 minutes, but it could mean the difference between a job and not, right?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I think I just want to check again to see if there's any other students. Actually, Ganning also submitted his LinkedIn, so why not look at it? We have a few more minutes.
All right. I was like, if this were a new grad application, I would say like, hey, like, great, you have experience in these things. Like, what are your aspirations? Like, what is your career goal? The first thing I asked my new hires in our first one-on-one is like, where do you see yourself in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years, and 20 years from now? And most people won't know more than a year in advance, even if they're like senior and they've been in the industry. But it's really important for not just when you're hired, but also before then to understand like what your direction is. If you're getting into software engineering with the intention of going into like electrical engineering, like that's going to obviously paint a much different story than if you want to get into like cybersecurity in the future, right? Like, I mean, it's only going to help, I feel like.
Yeah, I think Ganning, like at the level that you're at, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I saw that you like posted your website link here. So yeah, if you guys have external links, definitely put that on your LinkedIn. I've also seen people like link certain parts of text on their resumes. Since it's all a PDF nowadays, mostly, you're not really like handing in a physical paper often. Mm-hmm. So you can do that. There was a question earlier, I can't find it right now, but what about like what other platforms should people be using for either networking or just like creating their own profiles?
So I'm sure there's a lot of platforms, and I remember even in college in Michigan, there's one called Handshake, and we use that a lot at the career fair. It doesn't really matter what platform, but like really investing your time in in-person networking. I mean, maybe nowadays it's not in person. I don't really know how virtual like career fairs work, but at least back in the day, it's not just career fairs, but like, getting involved in conferences. So we at Target, we have one called Icon, ICONN. We talk about a bunch of different things. It's throughout the year a couple times. And at the end, we have like a networking like event too, where we match people up with people within the industry, and you talk about like whatever topic was discussed that day, and that also opens up career opportunities and whatnot. Like we can go on and on with a list of like these platforms to market yourself, like LinkedIn or whatever. But at the end of the day, like nothing's going to trump actual like connections that you make. And maybe if you do get 500 rejections on internship applications, maybe you need to cut back on those and spend more time like finding ways to network. As I said, career fair, conferences. You can even like cold email like people to see if you can like tour their office and stuff. Like we have that sometimes as well. And even if it's just touring, right? Like you can still meet people and have lunch with them and understand like what their job is and stuff. It's super hard. It's awkward and it's sometimes even embarrassing. But like as a hiring manager myself, like from my perspective, like don't feel that way, because like we really want to talk to you guys. It's just that it's really hard for us to find you guys in the first place. So if you guys could reach out to us first, like that would be a huge blessing, and I guarantee not everything will pan out, but like it'll be worth it in the end.
Yeah. And then speaking of career fairs, I like talked to a recruiter one time right after she was done with like 6 or 7 hours at a career fair, and she was dead. She was like, you could see like the emptiness in her eyes at that point. So it's a great place to start. But if you're going through the like time to go to a career fair and you have an extra couple minutes, then you might be better off just reaching out to them separately and setting up a different time to meet them than on a day when they're meeting hundreds of students back to back. We had a couple questions. Grace asked, where would you put your future goals and where you see yourselves in 5 years? Would it be on your LinkedIn?
Oh, the long-term, short-term, long-term goals thing?
Yeah.
I mean, you could put it on your LinkedIn, but that's just one thing. Like, I wouldn't say is like a huge plus either. If you have room and you have like something awesome to say about 1 to 10 years, if you're gonna say like next year I want to be an engineer, then 3 years I want to be senior, 5 years I want to be senior still, and 10 years I want to be principal. Like if you don't have a story to tell, like don't put it on, obviously. But if you do, if you can like kind of work that story, I would say it helps kind of pique the interest of the hiring recruiter. Like that's what you want to do, right? Because it's not that hard to kind of build your resume to not have red flags. Like as we saw in the examples, right? Like all of them were really good, right? If I saw all of them, I wouldn't for an internship position or even like a new grad position, I wouldn't throw any of those out into the bin. So clearly, like that's not really the issue. The issue is when you have 100 of really good resumes and I have one spot, how do you pique the interest? And like short-term, long-term goals thing is just one way to do it.
Awesome. Yeah. And then Maria was interested in the blog that you were writing. Is it something that you're personally passionate about or something that you use to network? Or is that part of your job?
Yeah. So I just write like blogs on Medium. It's not like I have like a personal blog or anything. It's just a hobby of mine to like write. Not a great writer, but like I just enjoy writing, and obviously I enjoy tech. So I end up writing a lot about tech. Recently been talking more about like leadership and like management and like this whole like remote working stuff. Like Medium, like at Park June or something is my username. But that, a lot of times I talk about what I do at work. If we have a hackathon, I write about that. And the one thing a lot of people don't realize is like how much impact that plays, in the workplace, not just for you to get a job, but even once you have the job, that involvement outside of Target, involvement in the tech network and, like contributing to the overall like community, like that will always put you in a better light than most at work. And it doesn't have to be a blog. We have a lot of tech talks where people kind of do demos of the new things that they've learned. People build POCs. People, I don't know, like what else? Like we have lunch, like we have someone setting up lunch and learns, you know, to like go through videos and discuss them. I'm setting up a book club, you know, with at least my kind of like inner circle of engineers here, you know, expensing that books out and the books out to the company and, you know, discussing them. You know, whatever it is, like whatever your hobby is, whatever you find fun other than just coding, integrate that into kind of like your tech focus, because it's only going to help.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, June, for helping us out and answering all of those questions. But yeah, resume and LinkedIn and all these things, they're all a journey. Like it just never ends. So keep like adding to it, keep updating it, keep improving on things that you've added before as well. You might have like phrased something differently 2 years ago and then realize now that there's a better way of writing that. So always look back at the things that you've already written as well. Yeah, everyone says thank you. So thank you so much,
Thank
June.
you.
And yeah, I'm just going to end the broadcast now. So bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you.